1 minute, folks. Technical difficulties. There we go. Alright, folks. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and as you can see, we are continuing on with Brian Deere's piece in the Down the Rabbit Hole series. But before we go ahead and continue on for this Friday, we are going to do a real quick disclaimer, and then of course go ahead and go over the trigger warnings real quick. So folks, if you're unfamiliar with the Stop the Shocks campaign or the campaign against the troubled teen industry, pertinent links are going to be there in the description box with what I hope are helpful labels, so that when you click on it, you know what it is that you're getting ready to pull up on your screen. So if you want to go ahead and do a bit of a further deep dive into the Down the Rabbit Hole series by means of looking into the history of the anti-vax movement, or you want to deep dive Andrew Wakefield, and let's face it, it tends to be the grift that keeps grifting, please feel absolutely free to go ahead and do so. Alright, and trigger warning, folks, we do have this channel marked not for kids for a reason. First off, some of the topics that we cover, such as the Judge Rothberg Educational Center or Agape Boarding School for Boys, and the torture and abuse that take place in places like it, including vivid descriptions and video surveillance clips, tend to be things that are very triggering. And of course, if you all know me, we use profanity because I can't turn it off. So, if your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this channel, folks, very much parental supervision, very much advised, okay? Also, I'm very aware that this channel is not flashy. We do not have all the bells and whistles, and we do not have professional production. I am an amateur, and this is amateur hour, but the information we put forward is not amateur at all. So if you can contend with the fact that this looks like the best efforts of the most technology illiterate between millennial and Gen Xer, it's because that's exactly what I am. I apologize for that in advance. And also, of course, as always, folks, when it comes to politics, whether you're on one side or another, I am not. Which means more than likely, I am going to say something that could possibly offend you. If that's not something you want to put up with, I would suggest a cat video. And if you still got a little bit, sorry, I'm being very rude, just look inside the description box if you don't want to deal with that, alright? Okay. So, down the rabbit hole, we are going back to Brian Deere's study and his absolute evisceration of Dr. Andrew Wakefield. It's a very, very brilliant work he did. And sad that it took so long for someone to actually corroborate what that fraudulent study originally put forward. Because, unfortunately, folks only like the first headlines. If you have headlines afterwards that contradict the original, people are usually predisposed to go with the original, unless you happen to be autistic like me, and you want your information to have corroboration by at least 3 or 4 different other groups before you go forward with it. Because, yeah, paranoid and thorough is kind of my modus operandi. Alright, so, the child was Pell. Yes, I am also pale. Pretty sure that has nothing to do with the fact that I'm autistic. I mean, there's a lot of us pale folks out here. Granted, I turned dark during the summer, even though I'm kind of losing my tan because I stopped going to the death pod. It's getting expensive. But still, that's a new one. Let's read into this, right? Let's go ahead here. Alright. The remaining 5 children served Wakefield's claims no better. There was still no convincing MMR syndrome. Child 1, aged 3 years when he was referred to London, lived 100 miles from the Royal Free and had an older brother who was diagnosed as autistic. Now, folks, most of us who have worked in the field, if one of us in the family's neurodivergent, it is also almost absolutely guaranteed that there's going to be more family members who are neurodivergent, whether they are diagnosed and realize it or not. There's also something called shadow syndrome. What that is when you have a family member that almost checks all the boxes for one of the neurodivergent diagnoses, except for a couple of the main symptoms that they use to make that diagnosis. For example, I got that. My mom is more of a hermit than I've ever been in my life, and coming from me, that says something. Okay? I mean, she seems to not like people. I mean, I don't like people either, but there's my version of the pseudo-autistic bubble of nope, and then there's my mom's version where I'm going to be out in the middle of a country area. It needs to be wooded, and I cannot have another house with a person in it within at least 5 miles from all directions. Type hermit, right? Granted, she's worked in healthcare her whole life, ER specifically, so there's probably a lot of reasons behind it. She also has less of a filter than I do, and yeah. Right, but yeah, it's technically, I've seen it just about every single time. If one of us is neurodivergent, there is probably at least one, if not more, neurodivergence in the family. So, or at least someone that does have shadow syndrome, where they might be just barely missing a diagnosis by 1 or 2 traits. Let me go ahead and continue. I just always kind of found that a little bit interesting. Child 1's recorded story began when he was aged 9 months with a new patient note by general practitioner Andrea Barrow. How the hell can you tell if a 9-month-old is autistic or not? Like what? Baby not making eye contact with you? Is that it? I'm actually genuinely curious. How could you suspect a baby that young to show manifesting symptoms of being autistic? They're 9 months old. I know I've used it before, but I'm going to say it again. If they're 9 months old and they are like talking up a storm and could like deliver a full Shakespearean soliloquy, I'm busting out the holy water. Because I'm pretty sure you may be possessed. I started learning to read and everything very, very early. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, someone please explain that to me like I'm a toddler using non-medical terms, because that one is just never made any form of coherent sense to me whatsoever. One of the mother's concerns was that he could not hear properly, which might sound like a hallmark presentation of classical autism, the emergence of which is often insidious. Can we explain to me why that automatically made the jump to autism? For real? If it seems like your child is not hearing you, why do you automatically jump to autism? Because my logical jump would be that maybe my kid might have a hearing disability. There are kids born every day who may be born deaf. They may be born deaf in one ear or have any type of difficulty in hearing diagnosis that has absolutely nothing to do with being autistic. Why have we as a society have gotten to the point that when anything pops up that seems it might be an issue, everybody jumps to they're probably autistic, even if it does not make logical sense to go there first? Because me, I would have had the kids hearing tested. If I had shown that type of not being able to hear my mom, I know for a fact she wouldn't have jumped to the fact that I was autistic. She would have gone and got my hearing checked. Like, what is even going on there? And by the way, the emergence is often insidious. We're not possessed. Okay? This is not... I want to pull a Dana Carvey church lady impression. It's just I'm terrible at it. Could it be Satan? Unfortunately, we've had a lot of people that will automatically tell you that autism does come from the devil according to them. And I've had the horrible misfortune of having run into such individuals while riding buses, online on social media, and it's not insidious. Good. Indeed, a royal free history by neurologist and co-author Peter Harvey noted normal milestones until 18 months or so. I'm going to bring it back to that question again, folks. Are these kids not hitting the normal milestones because they're regressing? Or are we looking at things in the wrong way because of how the modern media has influenced us? Okay? You see, you can't call it a regression if someone misses a milestone unless they had already hit that milestone and then lost it. If they never hit the milestone developmentally in the first place, that is not regression. That is a developmental delay. And we really need to start being honest in the public and informing people correctly about the difference between the two, because they are not the same. And this is how we have the full blown out complete anti-vax mania that is plaguing all of us right now while we're talking. Your kid misses a milestone that they never actually made originally. It is a developmental delay. It is not regression. Okay? It's pretty easy to tell the difference. And the way others will mislead people by getting people confused about the two has done more damage than I could ever actually be able to put into words for you all. Let me continue. Child 1 was vaccinated at 12 months of age, however. Thus, neither 9 or 18 months helped Wakefield's case. I should think not. Because as I said previously, what exact milestones are you supposed to hit as a baby when you're that young for some doctor to be able to accurately diagnose you as autistic? None. You are a baby. Your milestones are babbling, crying to announce when somebody needs to change the diaper, and slowly, progressively learning how to crawl, and then slowly to walk. Which is why, especially with that being the case for a child that young, I would have, if I thought it looked like the child could not hear me, would have got their hearing checked, not assume, right? But in the Lancet, the first behavior symptom was reported 1 week after the injection, holding the evidence for the lawsuit on track. Misconstruing, playing around with data and medical history of others. Who's surprised? I'm not. Not even remotely. Step 1 to achieve this. 2.5 years after the child was vaccinated, Walker Smith took an outpatient history. Although the mother apparently had no worries following her son's vaccination, the professor elicited the boy was pale 7 to 10 days after the shot. He also elicited that the child possibly had a fever and may have been delirious as well as pale. So we have revisionist medical history now. Was there any types of tests that were ran to find out if the child was delirious? Was there even the doctor taking their temperature to find out if they did have a fever? But they're pale. Okay, story time. One of the vaccinations I really remember was when I was 6 years old. I lived out in Mount Vernon at the time, and we really kind of had that one courthouse that's been there for years. And back then, the doctor's office was like down towards the bottom. So you had the main building, and then you went to the side, and there were some stairs that went down underneath, and then there was the old doctor's office, right? Okay. Because I have a massive fear of needles that lingers to this day, I had at least several individuals who had to hold my scaredy butt down. I guarantee you, when that little needle was there, I probably looked as pale as a ghost. Crazy how fear can make your skin pale. Well, paler than it already is. Right? Yeah. Just say. an emotional reaction, blood drains through your face, it goes pale. It happens, especially if you're a little kid and somebody's bringing a shot because, particularly when you're little, that needle is scary as hell. Okay? And to hold the child possibly had a fever. Excuse me, doctor, you're violating your oath. You're not allowed to insinuate anything in regards to another person's medical history that you do not have concrete evidence for. As far as I know, nobody's created a time machine back yet where he can go back and give the kid a thermometer to see if they have a fever. Okay? And they may have been delirious as well as pale. That is someone inserting ideas into a concerned parent's head. And if you want to call something insidious, in my opinion, that would be it. If you go over someone's medical history, and you're talking to a troubled parent, a parent that's concerned that there may be something really wrong, and you start making suggestions of this nature when they're in their vulnerable state, that's not a good thing. All of a sudden, they might start seeing things that were not there originally. Because then your mind will backtrack and make up things to kind of make sense with what the doctor's trying. You see where I'm going, right? That's not okay. You can't go and essentially use a concerned parent's vulnerability in that moment to rewrite their child's medical history and expect something good to come out of it. You can only act off of what you know as a fact as laid out in the child's medical history, period. You can have your opinions, sure. But to lay these suggestions at vulnerable parents, because when you're vulnerable, and I'll say I'm maybe just speaking for myself, when you're vulnerable, you're not as rational as you may ordinarily be. So someone inserts a suggestion, and then your head will start adding in things to it, and it could bring you around to what could possibly be a very incorrect and in certain cases very dangerous conclusion. Okay? Yeah. Because here's what happens. The parent will be like, well, one time I did this when I was changing and they didn't react, so this might be going on. Or say that you were trying to feed them one time and the kid just took up the food and like threw it up against the wall and it shattered all over everything. And then your head will start filling in the blanks. And all of a sudden you're left with multiple piling up logical fallacies. As a doctor, you have a certain level of authority that you have, particularly when you are dealing with kids. It is deeply irresponsible to start trying to say things like, possibly there may have been a fever. They may have been delirious. Well, They're pale. It's connect the dots in the worst way possible. It's irresponsible. It can do a whole lot of damage. Bad medicine's what I'm going to call it. Yeah, shut up, my mom loved Poison and Motley Crue. I was more thrash metal. Blame my brother for that one. Sorry. Alright. Let me continue. It's difficult to associate a clear historical link with the MMR and the answer to autism, Wakersmith wrote in the General Practitioner, with a similar letter to Wakefield. Although Miss One does believe that Child One had an illness 7 to 10 days after the MMR when he was pale, fever delirious, but wasn't actually seen by a doctor. Again, you are listing in possibilities that you have no way to confirm, which means that poor parent is now going back in their head and they're revising everything that they've seen, and they may be giving it the wrong conclusions. And you see why that's bad? Sometimes when a child doesn't want to eat, then they pick up their baby food and throw it against the wall. And it may have nothing to do with whether they're autistic or not. It could have to do with babies do crap sometimes. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't mean that they have something that needs to be diagnosed. Human beings are funny. Especially tiny human beings. Like my 80 nephew. Back when he was a baby. 'Cause yeah. Boy used to like to run around barefoot and gravel. And get his feet all messed up. And then get mad if we wouldn't let him go back outside. And threw stuffed animals at me. He was also someone who would take the pacifier out of his mouth and lop it at whoever was driving in the back of the head, or whoever wasn't facing him face to face. Does that mean he had a diagnosis? Or does it mean sometimes babies do things that are different, and we need to start laughing at life a little bit more instead of trying to stick a label on everyone before they're even at a coherent age to begin talking. Okay? That's the point. And a parent with that doctor could have said, well, maybe there's something more wrong with the pacifier. Maybe he did that because his stomach was hurting. We don't know that for sure. Right? He's not being seen by a doctor. Didn't seem to be any pain. He just hated pacifiers. And he would get angry whenever he was forced to have one. You see where incorrect assumptions can go horribly wrong? Yeah. Just saying is all. Alright, let me go ahead and continue. Step 2. For the Lancet, Wakefield dropped the question marks, turning Walker-Smith's queries into assertions. And although royal-free admission and discharge records refer to classical autism, Step 3, the former surgeon reported delirium as the first behavioral symptom of regressive autism with a Step 4 time to onset of 7 days. You see exactly what I mean? That's why you don't do that. don't put a hypothesis in and then run on it like it's been confirmed by 7 other university studies. Because more often than not, it's going to lead you to incorrect conclusions. You and me? Looks, it feels like my baby can't hear me. I'm going to go take them to the doctor to see if they might have a hearing issue. My brain wouldn't automatically jump to, well, obviously they're neurodivergent. But since the media has been oversaturated, especially starting between the mid-90s to now, people are doing that more and more, and you get where I'm going, right? Good. Okay. Let's go ahead and continue. I'm probably going to cut this in half and do the other half of the Pale Child coming up next week. It's getting a little bit long. So here behind the paper is how Wakefield evidenced his syndrome for the lawsuit and built his platform to launch the vaccine scare. It is significant that this syndrome only appeared with the introduction of the polyvalent MMR vaccine in 1988, rather than the monovalent measles vaccine introduced in 1968. He claimed in one of a string of patents he filed for business to be spun from the research. You see that? What did I tell you guys at the very beginning of this series? He had an alternative vaccine right there ready to make a whole bunch of money off of. So what do if you want to make money? If you are a grifter, first, create a problem that doesn't exist. At least the way Wakefield's trying to paint it. Then, you do a so-called study that corroborates your already pre-made hypothesis. Then, you create a solution, which in his case would have been spend your money instead, on an alternative vaccine that I just happened to accidentally just have filed the patent for. Create a problem, provide a cure, profit. That sounds familiar? That is because that has been the exact same formula that has been followed by snake oil salesmen since time immemorial. Right? At least the snake oil salesmen back in the day actually put on a show. But anyways, let me go ahead and continue here. This indicates the MMR is responsible for this condition rather than just the measles virus, which is inaccurate. It is a lie. It is a developmental delay, not regression. It comes from genetics. I promise you, look hard enough at your family tree. You'll find probably more than one that was definitely showing some traits. There may be some environmental factors in there too. But at the end of the day, you see where we're going, right? Alright. Let me go ahead and continue here. I'm going to check real quick, if you guys don't mind, to see how much. Okay, yeah, we're almost finished. Good. Okay. 3 of the 4 remaining children were seen in outpatients on the same day, in November 1996. None of their families were reported in the paper as blaming the vaccine. Child 5 from Berkshire, age 7 at admission, had received MMR at 16 months. The paper reported concerns at 18th months, but the medical records noted fits and parental worries at 11 months. Child 9, age 6 from Jersey, also had MMR at 16 months. His mother dated problems from 18 to 20 months. Child 10, age 4 from South Wales, contracted a viral infection, which was suspected by the parents and doctors to have caused his disorder 4 months after his vaccination. Behavioral changes, including repetitive behavior, disinterest in play, or headbanging, said a question-answer statement issued by medical school concerning Lancet 12 on the day of the paper's publication. Another discrepancy to emerge during the GMC hearing concerned the number of families who blamed MMR. The paper said that 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 11 linked developmental issues with the vaccine, but the total in the records was actually 11. The parents of childs 5, 9, and 12 were also noted at the hospital as blaming the vaccine, but their stated beliefs were omitted from the journal. So, we've got a lot going on here that helped lead to this insanity that we're all being forced to endure. You have doctors making assertions into a child's medical history with having no way to confirm whether that was actually happening or not. You have doctors that are jumping to the conclusion that it must be autism when the original reason the child got brought in was because the mother was saying that it seemed like her child couldn't hear her. Anybody logical would say, well, we need to be doing a hearing test. See if there's something that might be going on there, instead of automatically jumping to this. Why would a normal doctor make that kind of leap? Why wouldn't they even think about the idea of running and testing the young baby's hearing first before jumping to other conclusions? People need to think about that. Okay? And people need to remember, developmental delay is not the same as regression. Regression is, my child hit this milestone. Out of nowhere, suddenly they were no longer doing that. Developmental delay is, they never met that milestone to begin with. There's a huge difference between the two. And we really need to start getting more honest with folks and better educate them about the differences between the two. Because our sensationalist media has every bit as large a role to play in our current hysteria that has led to RFK Jr. heading our public health as Andrew Wakefield does. Because they took these fears and they sensationalized it and threw gasoline on it to get more views, to get more money. And wouldn't you know it, diseases that used to wipe out entire civilizations are slowly starting to come back. And these diseases were known to mutate at a pretty massive rate during the time of their heyday. If they come out now and they mutate, what makes it even more scary to me is that we're not as well informed. We're not getting updates from the CDC as much as we used to. Because we have a crackpot whose brain is being run by a worm making public health decisions for us all. That should scare the hell out of you. I'm going to go ahead and close on that one, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel, and the few we do get do tend to get removed from time to time, so please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and as always, folks, please don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time, and as always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I will see you all tomorrow when I go ahead and we are going to be updating the Medicaid. We're going to be going into the funding for group homes, how Medicaid affects that, the costs involved, all of that good stuff. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great day.